Hello again, everyone. My friends, we have now completed the topic of data types. So in this lesson, I want to talk about functions. So for this, I will create a new file and continue with it. And I want different topics to be as tidy as can be. As you will remember, we were typing functions using the function keyword in JavaScript. And let's say this function adds 3 different numbers and returns this total result to us. So that's how you write a simple function, right? In fact, when we look here, we're going to have trouble if the parameters that come in here have another type than number, right? So let's say that we give string values for the first variable here and number values for the others. Well, this is going to be a big problem for us down the road while we're working. So again, here, TypeScript offers a great solution. So likewise, I'll define the second function, of course, with a different function name. And in the same way, we'll create a function that adds 3 different numbers and returns a result. But in order to avoid the previous problem, I can specify that the next parameters will be numbers. So I specify that the variables will be numbers and the result will be number, just like that. So when I write a different type for the variable to come in here, the program warns me you can use number here as if it's not a string or a Boolean value. For example, as you can see, when we write the first function here, the variable types appear as any. However, it is obvious that these values will be numbers for the second function. And as you can see, everything is just a little clearer in TypeScript. And actually, that's what I was trying to tell you in the first lesson. So we can see the error in our code while writing, not while working. So it's possible to fix errors quickly on the fly. So yes, my friends, we can define these functions like this. So for another way, we can define them by using the let keyword. So we assign this function to a variable. We have already seen this article before. And here again, in the same way, we'll add 3 numbers and return the sum as a result. So now when defining this function, I stated that the result would be a number. So if I delete the return here, TypeScript will return an error, because I stated that when I was defining the function, a value would be returned. All right, so I want to show you one more thing that can be done with functions. So while we're doing these function definitions, always define 3 numbers and send 3 values as parameters. But I want this last number to be optional. So I'll just send 2 parameters. Now, normally, there's no problems with JavaScript, but when you look at how I'm writing like this, of course, it'll give an error with TypeScript. But if I come in here and put in a question mark, the error goes away. Why is that? Because I've stated that this variable is optional, and sometimes only 2 parameters need to be entered. So we can reinforce this with a small example. So now we have an optional parameter within this function. First, we'll add 2 numbers in total, and I'll put 2 to the variable count. Then, if the third number is not defined, we add it at total, and we increase the count by 1. Then we can go and print these values on the console. So, are you ready for another bit of usage of this function? So, as we're giving the parameters here later, we can also give default values when defining the function. For example, as you see, I'll define the last number here. I'm sending the other numbers later. So, in total, these two numbers and this number will be. And if I come in here and send 3 numbers again, this third number will receive the last number that we sent. We don't get any errors, both the first time and this time. So here, the values we determine in this way are default values. Terrific. So now there's another feature that I want to tell you about that we can use in functions. REST parameters. I don't know if you're aware of, but we've talked over a number of parameters so far. But sometimes we might not know the exact number of parameters while preparing our projects. For example, the number of customers visiting a site or the number of invitees participating, in an event invitation. You get the idea. But in such cases, we can use REST parameters. So now let's see how to use REST parameters just by defining a new function. For example, I want to find the average age of people who log into any site in this function. So here, while defining the parameter that will come to the function, I'll just put 3 dots in parentheses first. Then I'll specify the variable name and what type it is. So I'm using a number array. Now here, it is important that all the following parameters are of the same type. So the values will be numbers. Also, if the first value is certain, then we can define it here. So we can define the rest parameter as the second parameter. So let's calculate the average operation right now. So for this, I define 2 variables named total and count. I'll just make 0 as the default. Then I'll just create a for loop. The first value starts at 0 and continues until the last element of the number array. It will add the next variable with the total. And then the count increases by 1. So as a result, I can be dividing the total by count and get all right, so now that defines our function. And now we can send as many parameters as we want to here. So if we send 2, 3, or 4 parameters to this function, it's not going to have a problem. So do you see that? Then we can easily perform operations in uncertain situations just by using the REST parameter. Now, I want to show you one more thing. So the function definition here is the same as JavaScript, and there's not really a problem with that. But in order to be more professional, we can use the TypeScript const keyword. So we can define the function in this way. All right, my friends, so that's the end of the lesson. As you can see, we're making faster expressions, okay? Especially now that you're more familiar with some of these topics because of JavaScript. So here we examined some of the differences in TypeScript. Because the logic's pretty much the same, we can clarify the parts that are different. All right, so I want to see you in the next lesson.